Hello, everybody. This is the Commerce Experience Podcast, a show where e commerce professionals looking for the tools and insights necessary to thrive in this exciting, ever evolving space can come together. I'm your host, Elena Kachan, Community Marketing Manager at Bloomreach. In today's episode, we'll be exploring the dynamic relationship between human expertise and artificial intelligence. We have two guests today, which I'm very excited about. Both are Bloomreach ambassadors. One, Lasse Peterson, the lead architect and technical director for Bloomreach implementations at Nexus Ambition. Lasse is a specialist in marketing automation, omni-channel strategy, and enterprise architecture. Second guest is Rita Souza. She is the head of CRM at Lounge, a global underwear and apparel brand. She specializes in customer communication, automation, behavior analysis, and marketing. And like I said, both of them are Bloomreach ambassadors, which means they're power users of our tool. So excited to hear their perspectives. And thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So, in this conversation, we are discussing the evolving role of AI as a strategic partner. But having an AI co pilot isn't a one way relationship. You have to master the art of prompting. So, today we're going to talk about some practical, specific use cases, as well as opportunities for continued growth and learning with this skill set. Honestly, we've all been having interesting conversations about AI, and I thought we could dive into the meat of that topic right away. So I'd love to hear from you both, and obviously you both have different perspectives, but can you explain how AI has been shaping the future of technology and business from both of y'all's perspectives? Maybe Lasse, you can kick us off.
Yeah, so in regards to using AI, we use it in various different areas, and we have different ways of doing it. We have a lot of different capabilities here, and each professional capacity uses AI in a different way. So if you want to do some creative stuff, you have to use different tools. And if you do content, if you do technical, you need to use AI in different ways. And it has hugely improved time to market for a lot of our work.
What about you, Rita?
Very similar. I think obviously AI is a fantastic, super powerful tool when used right, and it can be used to really power and accelerate your efforts from a point of view of touch points with a customer to internal development, and as well upskilling yourself. I think is a big part of fantastic use for AI.
I know it's actually becoming an indispensable ally in so much of our work when it comes to e-commerce and marketing and beyond. So instead of viewing it as competition, like I want to focus on embracing it as a collaborator. So I want to hear from you guys. How are you using it as a collaborator currently? I'm hoping your perspective can maybe inspire others listening who maybe need some inspiration now that these tools are so widely available. What do you think?
As I see it, and I think you agree, Rita, that the AI is actually a combination of all these texts that is found, and that means it's a lot of different minds that have come up with ideas in history, and then it's combined, and using that's a strength, as I see it, that we can actually validate our perspectives onto multitudes of other humans' thoughts put together through a machine.
And I think as well is considering it as almost like a synergy, like you're saying, there's been so much quality input that has been fed into these machines essentially, that it just opens up also a different way of thinking. And I found from using it more, it has prompted me to take a more simplistic approach to certain things as well. And I know we're going to touch on it later about prompts and all of that, but I definitely think it has changed the way I approach certain things.
Totally. And I think we're all kind of learning on the fly a little bit. I mean, this just came out. I mean, having access to these tools just came out, almost a year ago now, and it's like taken off since then. So I feel like we're all just in this constant state of learning and trial and error. But I love that you brought up, like, first thing first, I love that we're all using the same machine. So I don't want to sound like everybody else. So there still needs to be some element of partnership, like you mentioned, Rita, which I think is so helpful to think about, because I think some people just automatically associate AI with like, oh, it'll just do it for me. But we still need to stay in the editor's seat, and we still need to, although bounce ideas off of it, maintain in the driver's seat and still stay strategic, still copy edit. So it still stays in your tone of voice. And I mean, I'm sure you guys have experienced this, but when it spits out copy, it's like almost so formal and it says words that you would never say yourself. And you're like, okay, this doesn't sound like me.
I usually just tell it to lift it up a notch, or make it more funny, make it in a different voice. So we actually, and Rita, I know you do this as well, just iterate over again and again and again, because you talked about that before. So it's
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my most used prompts is, okay, try that again.
yeah.
Because I think as well is really important to understand. For example, if using AI for, say, for example, content writing, and I know we've touched on this a little bit already, but I think is it so important to understand that, you know, you have, if you're approaching it from a marketing point of view, you have a brand to protect, and you can't, in my opinion, just rely on AI to write your content. That I personally don't believe in that anyway, but I do believe in using AI to help improve what you've written or to give you ideas of what to write. Prompt AI or whatever type of AI that you're using to give you theme ideas or direction ideas. That's fantastic. And then you can tweak and you can prompt again and say try again, make that less formal, make that a bit more fun. So I think there is definitely, like, prompting is a huge part of using AI.
Yeah, and
I,
upon that, I actually think that if you use different tools, you need to learn to ask differently. It's like talking to different people, to be honest. So that when you're talking to this machine or this machine or this machine, you need to prompt in a different way. And that is some of the capabilities we need to learn to be able to do. I normally say that when I was as a kid, I was asking a lot of questions to my dad, to whoever, and I was using a lot of words to describe what I actually meant. Then came the search engines. Then we needed to learn to pick out these keywords that was the right, and everybody could search, but not everybody knew how to pick the right keywords, right? Now we need to unlearn that and go back to actually asking real questions and iterate over the answer that we get. So if we don't understand it, we ask again. So we're actually going back into how we used to do as kids and what we know how to do and talking to real people, right?
yeah, I think getting clarity is super important too. Like, I love that you said try again or give it to me in a different way because I didn't like that. I think if you were talking to a human, you'd be concerned about their feelings and maybe saying, like, oh, I didn't get that. Or maybe have you thought about it this way? But now I'm just like, no, give it to me again. I need to hear something different. So I recently actually found a 6-step prompt checklist, which I thought was really helpful. We'll definitely share those in the notes because I think it all is really nice to kind of have a framework of like how to prompt. But I want to talk about prompting itself and just kind of expand on what we were saying. I think we could all afford to get better at it, and it's trial and error. But are there any ways that you guys are kind of like prompting it a little differently? I know you've mentioned like some feedback that you've given it, but any tips or things that you've learned that work really well with prompts, being super detailed, asking clarifying questions, things like that?
From my perspective, trial and error, and I'm a huge believer in trial and error with everything. Um, so I think conciseness, clarity, and almost like straightforwardness is almost essential to effectively use to to effectively prompt AI, I would say. But going back to what we were saying just a minute ago, is not hesitating to prompt the engine again to give us a different response. Definitely approach it as if you were talking with a colleague, like we spoke about earlier, and understand that AI is not a mind reader, so the more context you can give it, the better your output will be. And I always say the results or the output is as good as the input. You
Totally.
might have to tweak it, you might have to ask again in a different way, you might have to add context, remove context, but the output will always be as good as the input.
Yeah, and I actually find that really true because it's all about context. And you talked about, Lena, this is a new technology. We have been using it for a number of years, but now it's accessible. And one of the things that OpenAI did was having this context. So when you're in a window, it actually remembers that conversation. And that's one of the things I think that people should try out and try play with, having different tabs open, trying in one tab, asking one question, then having a conversation, then go back to another tab, asking the same questions, and see that the input and the output is actually different from time to time. Also using different roles, so saying to specifically a chat GPT, saying, well, now you are a marketeer, now you are CMO, now you are CEO, trying having it come back with that. So I agree totally with Rita. This trial and error, and just try it out, because we can all read all the blogs in the world and listen to all the podcasters in the world, but it comes down to us being able to do it ourselves, and that's trial and error. I totally agree with Rita on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing that myself too. Like it is interesting to play with it. And I love that you said, give it more context, tell it what tone you want, tell it what the job is that you need help with. And one thing I always think about is like, how do I use it, or like what use cases would make sense? I always think about like what I find like repeatable or replicable that like I could outsource. I almost use it. I think about like what I don't want to do and like think about how it can help
Yeah.
me. I'm like, yeah, you're a copywriter because I hate writing copy, or you are a podcast strategist and I would really love to like learn how to market the podcast, or whatever the case might be. So all really good tips that you guys have shared, and I think it's just kind of fun to to try all the
Yeah.
things and give it as much information. The more you put in, the better your output is going to be. I love that, Rita.
At the end of the day, is also about trying to look at it from a perspective of efficiency. Is it efficient for me to just be sat in a room talking about content specifically? Is it efficient for me to be sat in a room thinking about random themes? And obviously, I'm very lucky that I have a team who is fantastic, and they are great at generating content ideas and writing copy. And sometimes I can be going through that copy and think there is something missing here, but I can't quite tell what it is. Sometimes it's something that I might use AI to try and understand what is it that I feel like is missing. And oftentimes, actually, the output it gives me is not what I'm looking for, but it sets me in the right direction. I think this is crucial, like a crucial thing for people to keep in mind, is that it's not about always getting the right answer. It's sometimes about putting you in the right direction to get there by yourself.
Yeah, I
Totally.
agree. Actually, a fun thing about that, if you ask for exactly what you need, it might not be what you're looking for. I tried having I needed to write an email, and I just put in saying I want this email in this context. I want these keywords in there. Go ahead, and then it said I said specifically this is for a small part of the text, no headlines, no anything, and it just kept giving me highlights sincerely, and I was just going out of my mind what is going on, and then I realized it's because I'm asking for an email. I should just say I need a piece of content. So it's all about me being in this mindset. I'm writing an email, and this is part of an email, and in my mind, it's part of an email, and I don't want anything with headlines. And I even specifically said no headlines, no titles, no anything, but just kept giving me these titles, and then I just realized it's because I'm asking the right question in my mind.
Yeah.
The output is what I'm actually asking for, but it's not what I
Yeah.
need.
So I'm curious to hear from you guys, because you're both last year on the agency side, and Rita, you work with a major retail brand. Are your organizations like allowing you to embrace AI as a tool that you can use? Is it something that they're aware of? Are your teams experimenting with it? How is it in each of y'all's different environments?
I can say I'm actually lucky to be in an agency where we have a specific data team. We actually actually develop AI tools ourselves, ML tools ourselves. Also, it is something that we are urged to do in every aspect of what we do. So it's from top level asking us to use it in any way that we feel comfortable doing it. So it's really high focus, and that's what I hear in the market. It's almost always like that.
Especially being in tech too.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like
That helps
everything.
a lot.
Yeah, I know. For us too. And so, Rita, I'm curious to hear about your side. What are your thoughts on that?
From our perspective, it's been a really interesting journey, because I think initially there is, I'm not saying that there was resistance initially, but I think initially when all these tools started coming out, there was almost the fear that, oh, people are going to stop doing their jobs because these tools are going to do their jobs for them. Very quickly, you then realize that it's not the case, and quite the opposite. It accelerates people's work. It actually optimizes. It also allows people to massively upskill themselves. And I know within my team, it's used for those purposes specifically, and I myself encourage that. As I mentioned, I wasn't familiar with Ginger, and I have upskilled myself on Ginger because of this the existence of this tool. Same thing with HTML. I've been able to do achieve a lot with HTML that I had not didn't have the right knowledge for prior to these tools. And even on a personal level, I've done this recently. Planning a wedding, I'm planning a wedding website, and I don't know anything about CSS, so I'm upskilling myself. And I think when you approach things from that perspective, then from a business point of view, obviously it will be encouraged, because a lot of this knowledge will then come back into the business and enrich the business. And I think, Alandra, we're very lucky because we are at the forefront of, we're transforming the way people buy underwear and shop for underwear specifically, and been doing that for quite a few years. So I think anything to do with innovation, the business is always very, very keen for us to just try, and then if it doesn't work, try again.
I love that concept of pivoting if it doesn't work, because I do think that when it first came out, there were a lot of people that were very hesitant to explore and to try it. And I've talked to a lot of marketers, or even just, retail execs or folks in your position, where they're like, maybe at the beginning it was a little bit of a hesitation, but now it's kind of like, okay, I can actually work smarter, not harder. And I don't have to like take 6 months to do something I can get in like 6 minutes. So it's like being more efficient, I think, is top of mind for businesses, at least for us. And tech is a little bit more quick to embrace new initiatives like that. But it's cool to see that the retail industry is keeping up and at least open to you guys trying things and testing things out. So that's cool to hear your
And I
perspective.
actually think that, as I mentioned before, it has been there for quite a number of years. OpenAI and Microsoft and Google and all of these companies have built tools, but they were focusing on developers using these tools. But now when it's
Mm-hmm.
accessible, now we bring in all of these competencies, all of these ideas and thoughts, and having people work with it. And now we actually see what it can do, because nobody cared about it 2 years ago when we were actually still able to do it, but we needed developers to do integrations and frameworks and stuff like that to be able to use it. So nobody actually knew what they can do. But now when it's accessible and every company is doing their own sort of AI generative tools, now we actually see all the creativity coming into to play in this. And that's what I find really interesting, that now
Totally.
everybody can use it, right?
It gets the wheels turning. And I think too, like, I want to go back to the AI co-pilot use case, because I do think like I mean, it's something that we're all thinking about personally and in business, and we're using it in so many different instances, from, like you mentioned, content generation to editing maybe your current work, or how to optimize for, like a personalized customer experience. And it's only going to get more intense. There will be more use cases, and they'll just continue to expand. But curious to hear from y'all's perspective, like, what's your favorite use case that you've used it for so far? It could be a couple. I know we've talked about a couple different ones, but I'm curious, like, of all the things that you've used it for, do we have a favorite? Were we shocked by anything or its capabilities? I know this is kind of off the cuff, but curious to hear if you have one that you're like, wow, incredible.
For me, it's definitely the upskilling myself from a coding point of view.
Yeah.
And really interesting, I think when I first started using AI to upskill myself in terms of coding, it was very much, I have this problem, fix it for me.
Mm.
And, we've spoken so much about prompting in this conversation. And as I started using it more and more, and I started being more familiar with it and understanding its powers, I started prompting it in a different way, that I approach it more like, I have this problem, explain to me why it's happening, and
Mm.
help me find the solution. And because of that, it's completely changed. Rather than being able to copy and paste code, instead, I now have a framework in my mind of how to approach coding, which I didn't have before, if that makes sense.
It's like you're going on your own like master class course and you're learning exactly what you need to know. I mean, if you bought a master class course, you might not get exactly the tools that you need or maybe the advice that you need from an expert, but like this is a self-taught, self-learning journey, which I love. Oh my gosh, that's great.
I, I actually think that there's not one use case. Actually, for me, it's the variety. I can use it for basically everything I
Mm.
do. But in that sense, one that actually blew my mind the most was that working on a project where I had to explain a lot of different concepts in different non-technical terms, and I just wrote out the thing, and then I asked to have it actually correct my work, find sources for what I'm actually saying, because when we've been working with tech for 20 years, you just sometimes say stuff, and you know it's true, but you can't really remember why it's true. So having it actually build up the all right text for me and explaining and finding sources and correcting me when I'm wrong, because of course I'm not wrong, but then again, of course I'm wrong. It's like that sometimes we just get into this and we just work as we always did, but now I can actually have someone correct me, it can validate me, it can ask questions. So if I'm doing a presentation, I can say, well, if you were this person in the room, you read or seen this presentation I did, what would be your top 10 questions to you know to get me to find the loopholes in what I'm saying, so I can actually prepare for meetings, having the questions being asked beforehand, because I might not be able to see what the questions would be, but because it can have a different role, it can actually ask those questions. So that's what I find the most interesting, that the use case, not one use case, but the use case of it being a variety of different ways of working.
I love that. And the fact that, and you and I have talked about this a
Mm.
lot, but like the fact that you just listed like three really cool ones, I thought you had really great ideas. And I think being open to feedback or asking it to give you feedback is huge because a lot of times, like your ego gets in the way. I've noticed
Right?
that, like, when you come to maybe your boss and you're like, hey, I've got this pitch and here's what I'm going to do. But you didn't think about what they might have questions
Mm.
about prior to that pitch. This is a great opportunity for you to like make sure that you are on top of everything and maybe be able to handle any objections before you walk into the room versus being caught off guard
Mm.
when you're in the room. So I think that the fact that you said that is like a great thing to think about for people who might be listening. Like, okay, how can I use it a little bit better, a little bit smarter? That's a big one because I think we're all a little scared to get that feedback that we might not want to get. But it's like if the machine gives you feedback, you feel way less embarrassed, right?
Doesn't really doesn't hit us hard, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of like, all right, well, whatever. Like, it doesn't, I don't care. Less of an ego blow for me.
Yeah.
And I know we've been going all over the place with this, so bear with me, guys. But I know you guys are obviously trying to upskill and think about different ways that you can learn about AI. And I think being on the forefront of change is like the only way that you can kind of stay on top of where we're heading in this industry. I guess, do you have any predictions or anything you can see going forward or anything you're looking forward to when it comes to like utilizing AI, anything you're excited about or wish to see that you can share? I know this could be, you could take it anyway. So if you don't feel comfortable answering this, this is
No,
totally fine.
it's
We can
actually
always
fine,
cut this
but
out.
I think that's actually the key point here is that we don't really know. Because a year ago,
Mm,
we wouldn't expect us to be here where we're actually able to have a machine build a website for us, for instance. So being able to predict what's coming tomorrow, I really
you're
can't
like,
see it, you know. But I'm curious about what's happening tomorrow, because it's moving so fast right now that what we believe today might not be right tomorrow.
mm,
So that's what I'm seeing, is that we are on a steep learning curve right now, getting new tools all the time, getting to know the tools more. So what I see and what I believe in right now is that we will see an increase in people using it in everyday life. And I love the fact
mm.
that you're using it for wedding planning, Rita. That's a really cool point. That it's not just work. It's like everyday life. We just embrace it, and then it's gonna just go more and more into our lives, and that's what I love about it. That we just know we are headed somewhere where it'll be at a point where we cannot really think that life before having AI, you know? So that's what I see is that at some point we just use it like it's always been there. It'll be part of our lives.
I mean, now that I mean, like, can you remember like the days before the iPhone came
Mhm.
out? Like that new
Yeah.
technology is so unifying because now it changed the world or the way we view the tech world. And I mean, we go from BlackBerry to having a smartphone or a computer in your
Yeah.
pocket or even a flip phone to a smartphone. You're like, I can't imagine my life without having this little computer in my pocket. So I imagine that it would be similar with the AI piece. It's
I
like a
remember
takeoff thing.
I,
Like we
I remember watching Inspector Gadget when I was a kid, and now these days I got a watch on my hand that can do even more than he could, you know. And I know that there are companies working on actually integrating AI into smartwatches. So now you can actually use your smartwatch with AI coming in just a few years. And that's what I really find it funny that all the series I saw as a kid, they're coming into life now, that you can actually have all this tech in just wearing AI on your wrist. It's a personal assistant on your wrist. That's amazing.
how
I
did they
completely,
know?
Exactly.
yeah. I completely agree with what Lass was saying about we don't know where it's going, because for me, it's not even just the fact that a year ago we couldn't imagine ourselves in this situation. I would go even further. Would we a year ago be happy to admit that we are upskilling ourselves using a tool like this? And I think there is a big thing to be said about the using a tool like this to upskill ourselves on areas that otherwise either would, number one, perhaps not be accessible for us to upskill ourselves, or they would require a significant amount of resource, whether financial or timing. And I think, you know, it what it does is it gives people access to knowledge that otherwise they would find really hard to acquire. Um, so I completely agree, and I think more and more it's going to be used like that. But I do think there is also more and more we need to be educating as leaders and as you know, thought leaders. We need to be educating people on the fact that all of the aspects that we've been discussing in this call are crucial. That is a partner, not a machine that is there to do the work for you, and that you need to learn how to work with it and how to improve it, and also how to work with the output it gives you. I think those are the main takes away for the future for me.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And
Yeah.
actually, that point about the output, critical thinking, I believe, is something that we strongly need to work on, all of us, because we can't always trust it, of course. Sometimes it just says
Hmm.
stuff. I just got it to name 130 as a prime number, for instance, and I know it's not. So, you know, it's these things that even small things it can get wrong. And we just need to be critical thinking about it. And I totally agree, Rita. That's one of the key takeaways.
Definitely the future as well. I think some people that are quite resistant to innovation think that AI will make us um, more mentally lazy, whereas I completely disagree, and I think the opposite. I think critical thinking, like Lass just said, will be needed more and more, and I think for people to progress within their careers, now that tools like this are available, critical thinking will be the thing that differentiates people, in my opinion.
I think that's something to think about as learn a bunch and it's happening all so fast. It's like, how are you going to set yourself apart? How are you not going to be like everybody else using the same exact tool? Like you still have to maintain that mental sharpness to be able to take what you're getting from the output and make it your own, like make it still part of what you want to put out into the world. So I love these key takeaways. I think I'm excited about the future. And it's cool to hear how two power users are using it in personal and in business. I hope this definitely gave you guys some inspiration for those listening. So thank you guys both for being on the show, and hopefully I'll get to chat with you again soon in person.
Same, Elena.
Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for everybody listening. You can find more details about the Commerce Experience podcast at bloomreach.com/podcast. And thank you for following along. Until next time, bye.